Once upon a time, nestled in the heart of an ancient land, there existed a forest unlike any other. This forest, known as the Enchanted Wood, was home to mystical creatures, tall trees whose leaves shimmered like silver in the moonlight, and gentle streams that whispered secrets to those who listened closely. But the most wondrous thing about this forest was that it was a bridge between the waking world and the dream world. Evelyn, a young woman with an adventurous heart and a curious mind, had heard rumors of this mystical forest all her life. People spoke of it in hushed tones, of how those who wandered deep into its heart would find themselves lost in dreams that felt more real than reality itself. Many claimed they had entered, only to awaken in their own beds, unsure whether it was all just a dream. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Evelyn decided to seek out the Enchanted Wood herself. She had always been a believer in the magic of the unknown, and tonight it felt like the right time. With nothing more than a satchel of provisions and her trusty lantern, she set off toward the distant, misty trees that beckoned to her. The path was soft underfoot, lined with moss and delicate wildflowers that glowed faintly as dusk settled in. The forest seemed to breathe with a quiet, soothing rhythm, as if it had been waiting for her arrival. As Evelyn ventured deeper into the forest, she felt an odd sense of calm wash over her. The air grew cooler, and the forest around her became thick with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Every so often, a soft wind would stir the trees, sending a shimmering cascade of silver leaves fluttering into the ground. The further she walked, the more she felt like she was entering another world. A world that was not entirely real, yet not entirely imagined either. The deeper she wandered, the more the forest seemed to shift around her. The trees grew taller and more ancient, their trunks gnarled and twisted. The paths ahead of her forked and merged, leading her in circles that made her question whether she was still on the right path. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. She trusted that the forest would guide her. Suddenly, she heard a soft, melodic hum, a tune that seemed to echo from all around her. It was as if the forest itself was singing, welcoming her. Intrigued, Evelyn followed the sound, which led her to a small clearing bathed in silver moonlight. In the center of the clearing stood a large stone archway, covered in ivy and moss. It looked ancient, like it had been standing for centuries. The archway seemed to pulse with a gentle glow, and as Evelyn approached, she could feel a pull deep within her heart. A feeling she couldn't quite explain, but one that felt both comforting and mysterious. Without thinking, she stepped through the archway. As soon as she did, the world around her seemed to blur, and she was enveloped in a warm, swirling light. The sound of the forest faded away, replaced by the soft whispers of something far beyond the ordinary world. Evelyn's surroundings shifted, and when the light finally faded, she found herself standing on the edge of a vast sparkling lake. The water shimmered under the light of an ethereal moon, its surface smooth as glass. On the other side of the lake, a towering castle rose, its spires gleaming silver in the moonlight. The air was thick with magic, and Evelyn felt an overwhelming sense of awe. This wasn't the forest she had known. This wasn't even the world she had known. She had crossed over into a realm that seemed to exist outside of time and space, a place where dreams and reality intertwined. As she gazed out across the lake, a soft voice called out to her, pulling her attention away from the castle. "Welcome, Evelyn," the voice said. and she turned to see a figure standing at the edge of the water. The figure was a tall, elegant woman, with flowing silver hair and eyes that shimmered like stars. She wore a gown of delicate lace and pearls, and her presence was both calming and powerful. "You have crossed into the dream realm," the woman continued. "I am Seraphina, the keeper of dreams, and you, Evelyn, have been chosen." Evelyn's heart raced. Chosen? For what? Seraphina smiled gently. To embark on a journey through the dream realm, where the boundaries between dreams and reality blur. Here, you will discover truths about yourself and the world around you. Truths that can only be found in the realm of dreams, but be warned, not all dreams are gentle. Some are fraught with challenges that must be faced, and only those who are brave of heart can pass through them. Evelyn felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. What kind of challenges? And how will I return home? "The journey is different for each soul," Seraphina replied. "But fear not, for I will be here to guide you. You will not walk this path alone. Now the choice is yours. Do you wish to continue?" Evelyn paused, the weight of the decision settling in her chest. But as she looked at Seraphina's serene face and the shimmering lake before her, she knew that this was what she had been seeking all her life. A chance to explore the unknown, to uncover the mysteries of the world, and perhaps to learn something profound about herself. "I'm ready," Evelyn said, her voice steady. Seraphina nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Very well. Let us begin." With that, Seraphina raised her hand, and the surface of the lake rippled. A small boat appeared, its wooden hull polished and gleaming. Without a word, the keeper gestured for Evelyn to step into the boat. As Evelyn sat down, the boat began to drift across the lake, its movements smooth and almost weightless. The stars above seemed to draw closer, as though they were watching her, guiding her on this journey. And as she looked ahead, toward the distant castle, she realized that her adventure was just beginning. The boat glided silently across the water, drawing closer to the distant castle with each passing moment. The air around Evelyn was filled with the sound of a soft, lilting melody, as though the wind itself was singing a song from long ago. It was peaceful. Yet, there was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that something important awaited her at the castle. As the boat reached the shore, Evelyn stepped onto the soft, silvery sand. The castle loomed ahead, its gates made of intricately wrought iron, shaped like delicate vines and leaves. The doors were open, as if waiting for her arrival. Evelyn approached the gates, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She didn't know what awaited her inside, but she felt an undeniable pull toward the castle. As she entered, the interior was bathed in soft golden light. The walls were adorned with tapestries that depicted scenes of impossible landscapes, floating islands, cities in the clouds, and creatures that seemed to be part animal, part star. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and there was an overwhelming sense of peace. At the center of the hall stood a tall, elegant figure, a man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. His clothes shimmered as though woven from the very fabric of the night sky. He smiled warmly as Evelyn approached. "Welcome, Evelyn," he said, his voice deep and melodic. "I am Lorien, the keeper of the stars. You have come seeking something, haven't you?" Evelyn nodded. "I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but I know that I need to be here." Lorien studied her for a moment before speaking again. "In this realm, all who seek answers must first face themselves. To understand the world of dreams, you must first understand the dreams within your own heart. He gestured toward a staircase that spiraled upward, its steps made of glowing crystals. Go now, Evelyn. The first trial awaits you. Evelyn stood at the base of the sparkling crystal staircase, gazing up at its ethereal glow. The air around her seemed to hum with quiet energy, as if the very stones beneath her feet were alive with magic. The light from the staircase bathed her in a soft, otherworldly radiance, making the rest of the castle seem distant and faint, like the background of a forgotten dream. Lorien, the keeper of the stars, watched her from below, his eyes gentle but steady. You have come this far, Evelyn, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed in the vast hall. The first trial awaits you at the top of the stairs. It will test your heart. It will show you the truth, whether you are ready to face it or not. Evelyn nodded, though her chest tightened with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. She had already crossed into a world beyond her understanding, but this felt different. This felt more intimate, more personal. Go, Lorien urged, his voice a gentle nudge that sent her heart fluttering with both excitement and fear. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn stepped onto the first glowing crystal step. The soft glow beneath her feet warmed her soles, and she felt an almost imperceptible pull drawing her upward. The steps spiraled higher and higher, and with each one she climbed, the sounds of the castle below faded, replaced by a soft ambient hum that seemed to vibrate deep within her chest. When she finally reached the top, she found herself standing in a room that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. The walls were made of what appeared to be pure light, and in the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror. Its frame was gilded with intricate patterns of stars and swirling galaxies, and its surface shimmered like the surface of the lake she had crossed earlier, fluid, almost alive. As she stepped toward the mirror, she noticed that the reflection staring back at her wasn't quite the same as the version of herself she knew. In the glass, Evelyn appeared slightly different. Her eyes were deeper, her expression more thoughtful, as though her reflection had witnessed things she hadn't yet discovered. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cool surface of the mirror. It rippled in response, like water disturbed by a gentle breeze. Her reflection smiled, but it wasn't the smile Evelyn was accustomed to. It was a smile that spoke of knowing something, understanding something deep inside. Who are you? Evelyn whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was asking herself or the reflection in the mirror. The reflection didn't answer immediately. Instead, it gestured toward the floor in front of the mirror, where a patch of shadows seemed to grow thicker and darker by the second. Evelyn took a hesitant step back, but her reflection remained unmoving, silent. She felt a pull to move closer, and despite the unease curling in her stomach, she obeyed. With each step, the shadows at the base of the mirror seemed to draw her in. Like a magnetic force she couldn't resist. Suddenly, the shadow stretched upward, swirling into a figure, a silhouette of herself, but distorted. The figure's features were sharp, harsh, unyielding. It stepped out of the mirror, its form slowly solidifying, until Evelyn stood face to face with the shadowy version of herself. You wish to know the truth, the shadow said, its voice a low, echoing murmur that made Evelyn's skin prickle. But truths are not always kind. What if I showed you what you are afraid to see? Evelyn swallowed hard. The air around her felt thick, like it was pressing in on her from all sides. What do you mean? What are you trying to show me? The shadow smiled a cruel, knowing smile. I am you, Evelyn. I am the version of you that you avoid, the part of you that is afraid, that doubts, that hides from what's inside. You cannot outrun me forever. I will always be here. Waiting? Evelyn took a step back, feeling her pulse quicken. Number, that's not me. I am not afraid. I'm here to learn, to understand, to grow. The shadow's eyes darkened. Are you? Or are you simply running from the truth? The truth of who you really are, beneath all the masks you wear, beneath all the lies you tell yourself? Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to argue, but deep down there was a gnawing uncertainty that she couldn't shake. What if the shadow was right? What if she was running from something? What if the fears she had buried deep within herself were catching up to her, ready to confront her now? I'm not afraid, Evelyn said again, though her voice wavered. I'm not afraid of you. The shadow's smile widened. Then prove it. Without warning, the shadow lunged forward, its arms reaching out to envelop her. Evelyn gasped, her heart hammering in her chest. But before the shadow could touch her, she lifted her hands, instinctively calling upon the warmth she had felt ever since she entered the dream realm. The warmth of the light, the warmth of her heart. In an instant, the air around her seemed to shift. A soft glow radiated from her hands, pushing against the shadow's encroaching form. The shadow recoiled, hissing as if burned by the light. You are stronger than you think, the shadow whispered, its form beginning to fade. But you must face me fully, or I will always return. With those final words, the shadow vanished, leaving only Evelyn's reflection staring back at her in the mirror. This time, it was not a distorted version, but a clearer, more truthful image of herself. Her eyes were wide, but there was a newfound understanding within them. She stepped back from the mirror, her breath ragged, but her mind clearer than ever before. Lorien appeared beside her, his gaze kind but intense. You have faced your first trial, he said softly. The truth within is often the hardest to confront. But now you know, Evelyn. You're not just the person you see in the mirror. You are more. You have more strength, more resilience than you knew. Evelyn's chest swelled with a mixture of relief and pride. The fear that had gripped her heart just moments before seemed to dissolve, leaving behind a quiet sense of clarity. She had confronted her inner darkness, and in doing so, had discovered a strength within herself she hadn't known existed. Thank you, she whispered to Lorien, her voice steady now. The keeper of the stars smiled, his eyes twinkling like the distant stars in the sky. The journey has only just begun, Evelyn. There are many more truths to uncover, many more trials to face. But now, you are ready. With that, Lorien gestured toward the door at the far end of the room. Beyond this door lies the next chapter of your journey. But take a moment, if you need it. This trial was not small. Evelyn nodded, taking a deep breath. She had passed the first test, but she knew that there was more ahead. More revelations, more growth, more understanding of herself and the world around her. She walked toward the door, ready for whatever awaited her on the other side. The door opened before Evelyn with a soft, ethereal creak, revealing a world unlike any she had encountered thus far in the dream realm. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant hum of nature. She stepped through the doorway, and the scene before her unfolded like a dream. She was no longer inside the castle, but in a vast open garden. The sky above was a deep, soft purple, like the twilight of an endless evening. Stars glittered faintly in the air, though they were closer than any stars in the mortal world, as though they were within reach. The ground beneath her feet was soft, like walking on velvet grass, and every blade shimmered with a faint golden light. The garden stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with flowers of every imaginable shape and color. There were flowers with petals like spun glass, others that seemed to glow with their own internal light. The colors were vivid, almost surreal. Blues and reds and purples that seemed to ripple and shift like liquid. Some flowers were delicate and small, while others towered over her, their blooms as large as her outstretched arms. Butterflies. No, not butterflies, but winged creatures that seemed to be made entirely of light, flitted from bloom to bloom, their wings leaving trails of glowing sparkles behind them. At the center of the garden, there was a large stone fountain, its waters glowing with an otherworldly, translucent light. The water shimmered as it cascaded from the stone basin into the pool below, creating a sound like soft music, as though the very act of flowing water was singing a quiet lullaby. A peaceful serenity seemed to settle over everything, like time itself had slowed to a gentle crawl. "Welcome to the Garden of Forgotten Dreams," came Lorien's voice, soft and reassuring behind her. Evelyn turned to find him standing just a few paces away, his presence as calm and composed as always. His eyes were warm, but there was something different in his gaze now. A quiet sadness, an almost wistful expression, as though he too was remembering something long past. "This place, it's beautiful," Evelyn whispered, taking a slow step forward, drawn by the gentle allure of the garden. She could feel the weight of the air around her, filled with such peace and stillness that it seemed almost sacred. "But why is it called the Garden of Forgotten Dreams?" Lorien's eyes softened further, and he stepped forward to join her. "Because this is where dreams that have been lost, or discarded, or forgotten by the world are gently nurtured. In the dream realm, not all dreams come to fruition. Some dreams are abandoned, left to wither or fade away. Others are too fragile, too fleeting, to make it into the waking world. But here, those dreams are cared for. They rest here, waiting for the chance to bloom once more, or to be reborn into something new." Evelyn gazed out across the vast expanse of the garden. In the distance, she saw small clusters of strange, otherworldly trees, their trunks twisted like vines, their branches heavy with what looked like crystal fruit. The sky above seemed to shimmer with the soft glow of forgotten stars, and the air felt heavy with untold secrets. "I thought dreams were meant to come true," Evelyn said, her voice tinged with confusion. "Why would a dream be forgotten, or left to wither?" Lorien paused, considering her question with care. "Not all dreams are meant to come true in the way you might expect. Sometimes dreams are not abandoned by choice. They are forgotten because the world is not yet ready for them. Or perhaps because the dreamer is not yet ready. Sometimes the dreams we leave behind are the ones we can't bear to hold on to anymore, even though they were once precious to us." Evelyn's heart tightened. She understood what Lorien was saying. She had her own dreams, the ones that had pulled her through dark times in her life. But some of those dreams, over the years, had faded into the background. Some had been replaced by more practical goals, others by the weight of reality. There were dreams she had let slip away, dreams that had once felt so important, but now seemed out of reach. The idea that those dreams had a place here in the garden, waiting to be nurtured and perhaps brought back to life, filled her with a sense of both wonder and sadness. Is this where dreams go when they're forgotten? Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Do they ever come back? Lorien nodded slowly, his expression solemn. Yes, this garden is a sanctuary for those dreams, but not all of them return. Some dreams need time. Time to heal, time to be understood, time to evolve. Others are meant to be left behind, their purpose fulfilled. But as for those that do return, they are transformed. A dream left here may become something greater, something the dreamer never could have imagined. Evelyn looked around at the vast garden, her mind swirling with thoughts. She felt the weight of the space around her, the unspoken promise of possibilities. What if she could reclaim the dreams she had long abandoned? What if she could make them real? Lorien gestured for her to follow him, and together they walked deeper into the garden, passing rows of flowers and twisting vines that seemed to pulse with a quiet energy. As they walked, Evelyn noticed something strange. The flowers around them weren't the only things blooming. From time to time, the air would shimmer, and something would emerge from the glowing light, shadows of people, places and things. Faces she recognized and faces she didn't. Brief flicks of forgotten moments, forgotten hopes, forgotten dreams. At the center of the garden, they arrived at a small clearing where a single, enormous flower grew. Its petals were soft and silken, glowing with a deep, rich blue light. It was unlike anything Evelyn had ever seen. Beautiful, but also haunting in its quiet majesty. The flower seemed to pulse with life, its petals unfolding slowly, as if it were responding to their presence. Lorien stopped before the flower and turned to Evelyn. "This is the dream blossom," he said softly. "It is the most sacred flower in this garden. It represents the dreams that are on the verge of returning, dreams that are waiting to bloom once more. This flower, it holds the potential of all the forgotten dreams that have been nurtured here." Evelyn stared at the flower in awe, feeling a deep connection to it. There was something about it that called to her, something familiar. Her heart beat faster as she realized that it wasn't just any dream. It was her dream, the one she had long given up on, the one she had almost forgotten herself. "I know this dream," Evelyn whispered. "It's mine. I had forgotten about it." Lorien's eyes softened, his gaze full of understanding. "This is the heart of the Garden of Forgotten Dreams. Here you may choose to reclaim the dream you have abandoned, or you may let it fade and leave it here to rest in peace." Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, letting the stillness of the garden wash over her. In her mind, she saw flashes of her past, her childhood, the dreams she had once held close to her heart, the ambitions that had been dimmed over the years by reality. There had been a time when she had believed that anything was possible, when she had imagined worlds and adventures without limit. But somewhere along the way, those dreams had been set aside, replaced by the demands of life. Now, standing in the heart of the dream realm, Evelyn felt the warmth of that lost dream stirring within her once more. It was there, still alive, still waiting for her to remember. "I want to reclaim it," Evelyn said, her voice firm with resolve. "I want to bring this dream back to life." Lorien smiled, his expression full of approval. "Then the choice is yours, Evelyn. The dream blossom will guide you, but you must be willing to follow its light. There will be challenges ahead, and you may face doubts. But know this, the dreams that are worth fighting for are the ones that never truly fade. They only wait for you to remember." As she reached out and gently touched the glowing petals of the dream blossom, Evelyn felt a surge of warmth, and light flooded through her. It was as if the dream she had long abandoned was being reignited, rekindled with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt a sense of clarity, of purpose. This was her dream, and it was worth pursuing, no matter the obstacles that might lie ahead. Evelyn's fingers brushed against the dream blossom's glowing petals, and as soon as they made contact, a soft pulse of energy surged through her, like a quiet current flowing through her veins. The warmth of the flower wrapped around her, enveloping her heart in a way that was both calming and energizing. She could feel the dream she had almost forgotten stirring to life, like a slumbering seed that had been waiting for the right moment to grow. For a long moment, she stood there, eyes closed, letting the sensations wash over her. The dream, her dream, was no longer a distant memory. It was a part of her again. The images, the hopes, the possibilities she had let go of long ago. Now they were vivid and real, clear as the sky above. But as the bloom's light faded and the energy settled back into her chest, she realized something else too. The dream blossom, beautiful as it was, did not hold the key to her dream's fulfillment. It merely pointed the way. The true journey, the true challenge, would be hers to undertake. "Do you feel it?" Lorian's voice cut through the stillness, gentle but firm. He stood a few steps behind her, watching intently. Evelyn nodded, her heart racing with excitement and uncertainty. "Yes, it's alive again. My dream. But I don't know how to make it real. I don't know what comes next." Lorian gave her a knowing smile, stepping forward to stand beside her. "That is the next trial, Evelyn. To follow your heart, through all the doubts, the obstacles, and the uncertainties. The path of the heart is not an easy one, but it is the one that leads to fulfillment. Now that you have reclaimed your dream, you must choose whether you are truly ready to pursue it. The path ahead will not always be clear. It will test your resolve, your courage, and your trust in yourself." Evelyn turned her gaze from the dream blossom to Lorian. "What do you mean?" "How do I begin?" He looked toward the distant horizon, where the garden seemed to stretch endlessly into a sea of mist and light. "Follow the path that calls to you. Trust in what you feel, not what you see. The journey will ask you to take risks, to confront the things you fear, and to question your limits. But if you walk this path with your heart as your guide, it will lead you to the fulfillment of your dream." Evelyn felt a lump rise in her throat, a blend of anxiety and anticipation. She knew deep down that pursuing her dream would mean stepping into the unknown. It would mean leaving behind the comfort of the familiar. But the warmth she felt within her chest, the flicker of hope and possibility, pushed her forward. The dream was alive again, and she couldn't ignore it. She wouldn't let it slip away again. "I'm ready," she whispered, more to herself than to Lorian. Lorian's smile softened, and with a simple nod, he stepped aside. "Then go. Follow the path of your heart. You are not alone, even if the road ahead seems solitary. The dream realm is a reflection of your own soul, and within it, you carry all the strength you need to succeed." Evelyn turned back to face the path stretching ahead of her. It wasn't a physical road, not in the way she had expected. Instead, the path appeared as a glowing, ethereal trail, winding through the garden like a thread of light, weaving between the trees and flowers. She knew this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment she had prepared for. There would be no more hiding, no more waiting. The time to act was now. With a steady breath, Evelyn took her first step onto the glowing trail. The moment her foot touched the path, she felt the ground beneath her shift, as if the very nature of the dream realm was shifting to accommodate her journey. The air around her seemed to hum, filled with an energy that felt both foreign and familiar. The path lit up with every step she took, leaving behind a trail of glowing footprints that faded into the mist as quickly as they appeared. As she walked, the garden around her transformed. The flowers she had passed before now seemed to fade into the background, their colors muted and distant. Instead, the air thickened with fog, and the trees grew taller and more twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The once soft ground became rocky and uneven, making each step harder, more uncertain. Evelyn's heart began to race again. This wasn't the peaceful garden she had just left. This was a place of challenge, a place of struggle. And yet, despite the shifting landscape, she felt a pull deep within her chest, urging her forward. Ahead, the mist parted slightly, revealing a distant, flickering light. She knew instinctively that this was the next step of her journey. It was a symbol of the hope she had reclaimed, a beacon guiding her forward through the shadows. But as she drew closer, she began to hear something. Distant whispers, like voices calling out from the fog. At first, the voices were too faint to understand, but as she drew nearer, they became louder, more distinct. She strained her ears, trying to make out the words. "Don't go any further," one voice said. "It's not worth it. You're not ready. You'll fail," another whispered. "You've always failed before? Why would this be any different?" The voices grew louder, filling her mind with doubts and fears. Her heart began to race, her breath quickening. She had heard these voices before. These were the doubts she had carried with her for years. The fears that told her she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't capable of achieving her dream. But then, a quiet voice rose above the rest. A voice that was her own. It wasn't loud, but it was steady and strong. "You are ready? You can do this." The other voices faltered for a moment, but they didn't disappear entirely. They circled around her, whispering their doubts, their warnings, their fears. But the steady voice, her voice, grew stronger with each step she took, growing louder than the rest, drowning out the negativity. With every step, the mist grew thinner. The dark, twisted trees began to clear, their branches retreating into the distance. And ahead of her, the flickering light grew brighter, clearer, until it was a radiant beacon, warm and inviting. Evelyn felt a surge of confidence. The doubts still lingered, but they no longer held the same power over her. She had faced them, and she had overcome them. When she finally reached the light, she found herself standing before a door. An ornate wooden door, carved with intricate patterns of stars and vines. It was the kind of door that would appear in a dream, familiar yet strange, a threshold between worlds. As Evelyn reached out and touched the door, she felt the energy of the dream realm shifting again, like the closing of a chapter and the opening of a new one. The voices fell silent, and a calm certainty filled her chest. She was ready to take the next step. She had walked the path of the heart, faced her fears, and now the door before her beckoned. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door. When Evelyn stepped through the door, she found herself standing at the edge of a familiar place. The small town she had once called home. But it wasn't the town as she remembered it. It was different, somehow more vibrant, more alive. The colors of the buildings, the flowers in the windows, the sky above. Everything felt more vivid, more full of possibility. It was as if the dream she had reclaimed had reshaped her world, infusing it with the light and energy she had so long kept hidden. And yet, something else was different. Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace. The doubts, the fears, while they still existed, no longer controlled her. She had learned that the path of the heart, though difficult, was one worth walking. And now, as she stood in this transformed world, she realized that the journey had only just begun. The dream she had reclaimed was hers to shape, hers to live. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn smiled. And it was a smile filled with the hope and courage that only dreams can bring.